The longship crested a wave, its dragon-headed prow cutting through the mist like a blade through flesh. Ivarn Agesson stood at the stern, one hand on the steering oar, his ice-blue eyes fixed on the distant shore of Northumbria. The salt spray had long since soaked his beard, turning the auburn strands dark as blood. Behind him, 40 warriors waited with hushed anticipation, their shields lined along the gunwales, their axes and swords ready. "The gods favor us with fog," growled Thorkel, Ivarn's second-in-command. "They will not see us until we are upon them." Ivarn said nothing, his thoughts on his father's final words before the fever took him 3 moons past. "Reclaim our honor, my son. The blood feud must end." The old man had clutched Ivarn's arm with skeletal fingers, his eyes burning with decades of hatred. "Promise me you will make the Erickson clan pay for what they stole from us." Now, as the shoreline grew clearer, Ivarn's jaw tightened. His father had died believing the Ericksons had slaughtered his brothers during a trading voyage 20 summers ago. As the new Jarl of his people, Ivarn carried this blood debt like stones tied to his soul. "Chief," called Thorkel, pointing toward a settlement nestled in a protected cove. "That is the place. Their watchmen have not raised the alarm." Ivarn nodded, turning the steering oar slightly. "Remember my command. We take what is owed, grain, silver, and thralls. But no unnecessary blood. The Allfather watches, and I would not anger him with dishonorable slaughter." Several warriors exchanged glances. Ivarn knew what they thought, that he lacked his father's ruthlessness. That mercy was weakness. But a true leader won through strength tempered with wisdom, not blind rage. Still, the blood feud demanded satisfaction. The Ericksons would learn that the son of age was not to be dishonored. The keel scraped against the shallows, and Ivarn leapt into the frigid water, drawing his sword. "For honor," he shouted, and his men echoed the cry as they charged toward the sleeping village. The raid unfolded with practiced precision. Stores were emptied, livestock driven to the ship, and valuables gathered. Ivarn himself led the party to the chieftain's hall, kicking open the door to find it eerily deserted. "They knew we were coming," he muttered, surveying the abandoned feast tables. A soft sound from behind a hanging tapestry caught his ear. With a swift motion, he yanked it aside, sword raised, only to find himself facing a young woman. She wore a fine blue dress embroidered with silver thread, her hair the color of wheat fields at harvest, falling in waves around her shoulders. But it was her eyes that gave him pause, milky pale, unseeing, yet somehow fixed on his face with unnerving precision. "If you've come to kill my father, you are too late," she said, her voice steady despite her evident fear. "The sickness took him last winter." Ivarn lowered his blade slightly. "You are of the Ericksons." "I am Helga Erickson," she replied, raising her chin with defiance. "Daughter of Jarl Einar Erickson." The name sent a surge of bitterness through Ivarn's blood. Einar, the very man who had allegedly ordered the ambush that killed his uncles. "Where are your people?" he demanded. A small, bitter smile touched her lips. "They have fled to the high ground. They left me behind, believing I would slow them down." She gestured to her unseeing eyes. The blind daughter was deemed a worthy sacrifice. Something in her words struck Ivarn like a physical blow. Here was the blood of his enemy, abandoned by her own kin, yet facing death with more courage than many warriors he had known. "Take her," ordered Thorkel, approaching from behind. "A Jarl's daughter will fetch a fine ransom." Ivarn hesitated, then sheathed his sword. "She comes with us." Unharmed. The return voyage was swift, the wind at their backs as if the gods themselves approved of their plunder. Helga sat near the prow, wrapped in furs against the biting cold, her blind gaze fixed on the horizon as though she could see it. Despite his men's curious glances, Ivarn had assigned 2 warriors to ensure her comfort and safety, a courtesy that puzzled even himself. On the 3rd night at sea, he found himself sitting beside her as the crew slept. "Why did you spare me?" she asked without preamble, her fingers working deftly on a small piece of wood she was carving despite her blindness. "You are more valuable alive," he answered, the practiced response of a raider. She smiled faintly. "You lie poorly, Jarl Age's son. Ivarn started. How do you know my name? I never spoke it. Your men call you Age's son when they think I cannot hear. Her hand stilled on the carving. And I have heard tales of the blood feud between our families since I was a child. My father spoke of it often, especially when the mead flowed freely. Your father and his men ambushed mine on a trading journey, Ivarn said coldly. Cut them down without honor or warning. Helga tilted her head. Is that the tale you were told? My father said it was your kin who betrayed ours, that they came as guests and left as murderers. Ivarn's hand tightened on his belt knife. You dishonor the dead with such lies. What is truth between enemies? She asked simply. Each side holds to their own version until the blood runs too deep to remember how it began. Her words unsettled him more than he cared to admit. For 20 years, his family had nurtured this hatred, this certainty of betrayal. To question it was to question everything he had been raised to believe. 3 days later, they reached the shores of their homeland. The village erupted in celebration at the successful raid, but whispers quickly spread about the blind Erickson woman. Ivarn brought her to his hall, ignoring the disapproving glances of his mother and the council of elders. You bring the enemy into our midst, demanded Gunnar, the oldest of the council members. This is folly, Jarl. She should be ransomed or sold. She remains under my protection until I decide her fate, Ivarn declared, his tone brooking no argument. That night, as Helga slept in a small chamber off the main hall, Ivarn dreamed of ravens circling a battlefield, their cries forming words he could almost understand. He awoke with the certainty that the Allfather was sending him a message, though its meaning remained clouded. Days turned into weeks. Against all reason, Ivarn found himself spending time with the Erickson woman. She moved through his hall with surprising grace for one without sight, learning the layout quickly and soon helping the household women with their tasks. Her fingers proved skilled at weaving and carving, and her voice, when she sang the old songs in the evening, silenced even the most hardened warriors. How do you navigate so well without sight? He asked her one afternoon as they walked along the cliff path above the sea. Helga's smile held secrets. There are different ways of seeing, Jarl Age's son. The world speaks to those who listen. As spring thawed into summer, Ivarn realized with growing unease that his captive had begun to capture something of himself. Her quiet strength, her wisdom beyond her years, her refusal to be defined by her blindness, all drew him to her like metal to a lodestone. One morning, Ivarn found Helga standing in the center of the village, her face turned upward toward the sky where a pair of ravens circled. They've been following us for days, she said when she heard his approach. Hugin and Munin, the Allfather's messengers. Ivarn stared at her. How could you know they are there? Instead of answering, she reached for his hand, her touch sending unexpected warmth through his calloused palm. There is something I must show you. Something I have kept hidden. She led him to the small hut where she had been given quarters, closing the door behind them. In the dim light, she turned to face him. What I tell you now must remain between us, she said solemnly. My blindness is real, I was born without sight. But the gods gave me a different gift. She closed her milky eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, Ivarn gasped. Her eyes had transformed, the pupils elongated like those of a serpent, the irises glowing with an amber fire that seemed to burn from within. By the gods, he whispered, taking a step back. When I was a child, she explained, her voice tight with tension, a dragon raided our cattle. My father's men wounded it, and it crashed near our settlement. I was curious and wandered too close. It was dying, but before its last breath, it touched its snout to my forehead. She swallowed hard. Since then, I can sometimes see through the eyes of dragons. Dragons are rare in these lands, Ivarn said, struggling to comprehend her words. Not as rare as you might think. They hide their true forms. The ravens above us, they are not the Allfather's messengers, though they serve him. They are dragonkin in disguise, watching over the bloodlines of men. Ivarn shook his head in disbelief. This is madness. Through their eyes, I have seen you, she continued. I know your face, the color of your hair, the scar on your left shoulder from your first battle. She reached up, her fingers hovering near his cheek. I know you are not the man your father was. There is mercy in you, and wisdom. Ivarn caught her hand, his mind reeling. If what you say is true, if you can see through these creatures, then why were you abandoned by your people? Pain flashed across her face. Because they fear what they do not understand. They call it witchcraft, say I am touched by dark magic. My father protected me while he lived, but after his death. She shrugged, the gesture speaking volumes. That night, Ivarn could not sleep. He paced the shore, watching the moonlight on the waves, his thoughts in turmoil. If Helga spoke the truth, she possessed a power beyond imagining. Yet instead of using it against him, she had revealed her vulnerability. His contemplation was interrupted by shouts from the village. Running back, he found several warriors surrounding a lone figure, a man in travel-stained clothes, his hand on his sword hilt. I am Helga Erickson, the man announced as Ivarn approached. Brother to Jarl Einar. I have come for my niece. Ivarn's men tensed, hands moving to weapons, but he raised his arm for restraint. You come alone into the heart of your enemy's territory? That is either great courage or great foolishness. Bragi's weather-beaten face remained impassive. I bring an offer of truce. The feud has taken too many lives on both sides. My brother's last wish was to end it. Strange words from an Erickson, Ivarn replied coldly. Your family has shown no interest in peace before. Because both sides cling to old hatreds rather than truth, Bragi said. I propose an exchange, your captive for the true account of what happened 20 summers ago. Before Ivarn could respond, Helga emerged from the crowd, her blind eye somehow finding her uncle with unerring accuracy. Uncle, she said softly. You came. Of course I came, child, Bragi answered, his voice gentling. Though the council opposed it. They say you are. He trailed off, glancing at the gathered Vikings. Cursed? Helga finished for him. Touched by dark magic? You may speak freely, uncle. Jarl Agesson knows of my sight. Ivarn felt the eyes of his people upon him, questioning, concerned. He made a swift decision. We will speak in the great hall. Bring mead and food for our guest. Inside, with only his most trusted advisors present, Ivarn listened as Bragi unfolded a tale that shook the very foundations of his belief. According to the Erickson elder, neither side had betrayed the other. Both groups of traders had been set upon by a third party, sea raiders from the east who left survivors on both sides to tell conflicting tales. They sought to turn our clans against each other, Bragi explained, knowing we would destroy ourselves through blood feud while they claimed the trading routes. And you expect me to believe this convenient story? Ivarn demanded, though doubt had already taken root in his mind. Bragi reached into his tunic and withdrew a silver arm ring, placing it on the table between them. This belonged to your uncle Halfdan. My brother recovered it from the leader of the Eastern Raiders 3 summers past, when we finally tracked them down. Ivarn stared at the arm ring, recognizing the distinctive wolf head design his family had used for generations. If what you say is true, 20 years of blood feud built on lies. Men are quick to believe the worst of their enemies, Bragi said quietly. It serves the heart's desire for vengeance. Later that night, after Bragi had been given quarters and the hall had emptied, Ivarn sought out Helga. He found her by the shore, the moonlight silvering her hair. Did you know, he asked, his voice rough with emotion, about the truth of the feud? She shook her head. I suspected. Through dragon eyes, I have seen men's hearts more clearly than most can with normal sight. There was too much conviction on both sides for simple betrayal. Ivarn stood beside her, watching the play of moonlight on the waves. The council will resist. 20 years of hatred does not vanish with one story. What does your heart tell you, Jarl Agesson? He considered the question carefully. That I am weary of carrying my father's vengeance. That perhaps there is another way forward. The ravens have been showing me something, Helga said, turning her face toward him. A future where our bloodlines join instead of opposing one another. The dragon see patterns in the weave of fate that we cannot. Are you suggesting an alliance? Ivarn asked, though he understood her meaning went deeper. I am suggesting that the gods have brought us together for a purpose. The question is whether we are brave enough to fulfill it. The summer waned, and as the harvest approached, Ivarn called for an assembly of all free people to decide matters of importance. Word was sent to the Erickson clan, inviting them to attend under truce. On the appointed day, the two clans gathered on neutral ground, tense and watchful, hands never far from weapons. Ivarn stepped into the center of the circle, his voice carrying across the assembly. For 20 summers, our families have shed each other's blood, believing ourselves betrayed. I have discovered this feud was built on the lies of our common enemy. He held up the silver arm ring. This evidence, along with testimony from both sides, proves that we were manipulated into destroying each other while Eastern raiders claimed our trade routes. Murmurs spread through the crowd, skeptical and hopeful in equal measure. I propose an end to this blood feud, Ivarn continued, to be sealed by bonds stronger than oath or silver. He turned toward Helga, who stood with quiet dignity beside her uncle. I ask for the hand of Helga Erickson, that our bloodlines may be joined and our feud buried forever. The assembly erupted in shouted arguments. Many protested, calling it sacrilege to mix blood with enemies. Others, weary of the endless cycle of revenge, voiced cautious support. Amid the chaos, Helga stepped forward, and something in her bearing quieted the crowd. I accept Jarl Agesson's proposal, she announced, her blind eye seeming to meet those of each person present. But I do so not merely as a peace token. I do so because I have seen his heart and found it worthy. From above, a harsh cry split the air. 2 ravens descended, circling the assembly 3 times before landing on a nearby standing stone. The crowd fell silent at this omen. The Allfather witnesses our pledge, Ivarn declared. Who among you would challenge his approval? In the weeks that followed, preparations for the wedding consumed both clans. Old grievances surfaced and were addressed, compensation arranged for past wrongs on both sides. It was not an easy peace, but it held, strengthening day by day as the common origin of their feud became widely accepted. The night before the wedding, Ivarn found Helga standing on the cliffs again, her face turned toward the sky where a full moon illuminated the landscape. Are you certain of this path? He asked quietly. Once taken, there is no turning back. She turned toward him, and in the moonlight, her eyes briefly flashed with that uncanny amber glow. I have seen our future through dragon eyes, Ivarn Agesson. It is filled with both shadow and light, as all lives must be. But it is a future worth building. He took her hands in his. When did you know that this was our fate? The first moment you chose mercy over vengeance in my father's hall, she replied simply. A lesser man would have taken my life without hesitation. But you saw me as a person, not merely an enemy's blood. I saw you as extraordinary, he corrected, long before I knew of your gift. The wedding ceremony took place at midsummer, when the days were longest and the veil between worlds thinnest. Both clans gathered on the sacred ground between their territories, where a stone circle had stood since time beyond memory. Ivarn waited at the center, dressed in his finest tunic embroidered with silver thread, his father's sword at his hip and a cloak of rich blue fastened with a silver brooch. When Helga appeared, led by her uncle, a hush fell over the assembly. She wore a gown of deep green, her golden hair braided with flowers and small silver bells that chimed softly with each step. Around her neck hung an amber pendant carved in the shape of a dragon. The ceremony proceeded according to ancient custom, hands bound with linen, oaths sworn on sacred rings, mead shared from a single cup. When the Godi, the priest, asked if any opposed the union, a tense silence fell. Then, from the back of the crowd, an elder from the Erickson clan stepped forward. I have lived long enough to see the beginning of this feud, the old woman announced, her voice surprisingly strong. My heart rejoices that I have lived long enough to see its end. May the gods bless this union with many children, that our bloodlines may be forever intertwined rather than opposed. A cheer went up from both clans, and as Ivarn kissed his bride to seal their union, the two ravens appeared once more, circling overhead before disappearing into the summer sky. That night, as the wedding feast continued around them, Ivarn and Helga slipped away to a moment of privacy. "Wife," he said, savoring the word. "What do your dragon eyes see for us now?" She smiled, reaching up to touch his face with gentle fingers that mapped his features. "I see a home built with love rather than hate. I see children who will know peace rather than blood feud. I see a future where our people sail together rather than against one another." "And the dragons?" he asked. "Will they continue to watch over us?" "They have always watched over all of us," she replied. "Most are simply unable to see them in return." As the seasons turned, the united clans prospered. Trade flourished without the constant threat of ambush, and together they repelled the eastern raiders who had manipulated them for so long. Helga bore Ivarn 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, all with their mother's golden hair but their father's ice-blue eyes. To the relief of both parents, none inherited Helga's blindness, though their daughter sometimes spoke of strange dreams where she soared above the clouds. On their 10th anniversary, Ivarn took Helga sailing on a small boat, just the two of them. As they rounded the headland where they had first built their joint settlement, a mist rose suddenly from the calm sea. "Look," Helga whispered, her milky eyes widening. Through the mist, a massive shape emerged, a dragon, its scales gleaming like polished copper in the sun, wings spread wide against the sky. It regarded them with ancient eyes the color of amber fire, then dipped its massive head in what could only be described as acknowledgement before disappearing back into the clouds. "Did you see that through your own eyes?" Ivarn asked in wonder. Helga smiled, tears tracking down her cheeks. "No. For the first time, I saw it through yours. The dragons wanted you to see them at last, to know that they approved of the path we chose." Ivarn pulled her close, his arms encircling her slender form. "We ended a blood feud that consumed generations. We built peace where there was only hatred. And we found love," she added, "where there should have been only enmity." "The greatest victory of all," he agreed, kissing her brow as their boat sailed onward through waters now clear of mist, under skies where dragons soared unseen except by those with eyes to truly see.